Here's our 1/2 inch plywood. We're going to scarf for the bottom of the boat. This is the router scarfing jig. It's an 8-to-1 slope. That's what I use for the bottoms of the boats. It's got a couple 7/8 inch holes drilled in it. This is some 1/2 inch iron pipe. That's what we use to hold the jig in place. Just use pipe clamps on either side of it. Here's our router with a pattern cutting bit in it. I use a 3/4 inch. You can use a 1/2 inch if that's all you have. It's got a top bearing on it to keep it from chewing into the side of this. It's not absolutely necessary to have that bearing. You just got to be careful you don't get too close to the sides or you'll cut into that wood. I've also attached some aluminum kind of extenders for the router so I can cover more ground on each pass. It's not absolutely necessary. You can just build the jig at whatever width your router will accept and just make more passes. I've also just put some plastic on here just to cover this up because this thing really kicks off a lot of chips, and that just kind of keeps them in one place, keeps them from blowing all over the place. Again, not necessarily necessary. I've set the router depth to just a shade over halfway through the plywood for our first pass. So we'll cut all the way across, and I'll come back and I'll reset the router for the final depth and make our final cuts. So I've made the first cut. Now I'm going to move the jig over. So I'm just going to loosen the clamp, move it over to the next area that I'm going to cut, and reclamp it. Now I have made some reference lines both inside and outside, and drawn a line up here 4 inches from the bottom, which is the 8-to-1 scarf. And I line up these reference lines on the line each time just to make sure I'm getting a consistent cut. The reason I vacuum this out after every pass is if you get any sawdust or chips underneath this, it's going to alter the height of it and your scarf will be off. So that's why I go through the effort of just giving a little vacuum in between each one. Now when you get to this last one, you're going to set it just barely on the edge because you can't go past the edge or it'll flop down. So that's going to leave you a little ridge right here that you'll just hit with the belt sander. It's no big deal. Okay, I've reset the router, so it's now going to cut about halfway through the last veneer on the plywood. You don't want it, you can't go all the way to the edge. It'll just tear it out and make it look really nasty. So we're going to leave a little bit of a thick edge left, not real thick, but a little bit of a thick edge left, and then we'll finish it off with the belt sander when we're all done. So when you're cutting it, it's going to start a little below your reference line, and it's going to come out before you take this all the way down to its final edge. So for sanding the edge of the scarf, I like to put down a piece of really thin sheet metal. And I just taped it to the bench here, and we'll put the plywood on that. And this gives you a little edge when you're using the belt sander for it to ride on, so you get the nice feathered edge without sanding into the plywood. So I tape both edges. I like to put a little tape down here because the blue tape is a little easier to see when you're sanding, where you know when you're starting to get to the end of the sanding. I've now moved the plywood so that the edge of the plywood is at the very edge of my bench on top of that sheet metal that we showed. Now we're just going to use the belt sander and get this all nice and even. What we want to do is make this top line disappear barely, at the same time making this a nice feathered edge. I mean, when I say feathered, it's going to be really feathered. I mean, to the point of disappearing. And that's how you get a really nice looking scarf joint. I find if you concentrate on the line up here and don't worry about down here too much, as long as you're holding your belt sander flat, when this line is just getting ready to disappear, this edge is a lot more fragile, and it'll pretty much take care of itself. So you get to where you remove this line, and then all you need to do is hit this just a little bit, and it'll give you this nice feathered edge. The blue will just start to be seen as you're doing this. So there you have the finished scarf, and we'll zoom in here a little bit, and you should be able to see where the bottom edge has just got a nice feather to it. That'll allow the plywood to lay together really nice and make a really nice looking scarf joint.